The courtroom stretched before Captain Sarah Chen like a vast metal cathedral. 7 different species sat in judgment, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that hummed with light to massive creatures covered in thick armor plates. Sarah stood alone in the center, her hands bound in energy shackles that glowed an angry red. She had been standing there for 6 hours. The lead prosecutor moved forward. Harmonizer Velkith was a Kesh, his body made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice chimed like broken glass. Captain Sarah Chen of Earth, you stand accused of the murder of 12,000 Valerian refugees, the destruction of the colony ship Prosperity's Dawn, an act of such cruelty that it shocks the conscience of all civilized species. Sarah kept her face still. She had learned quickly that showing emotion in this court was seen as primitive, weakness. The other species prided themselves on logic and control. Humans were the newcomers here, barely 50 years into galactic society. They were tolerated, not welcomed. I did not destroy that ship, Sarah said quietly. I tried to save it. Velkith made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Laughter, perhaps. The evidence speaks otherwise, human. He gestured, and holographic displays filled the air above the courtroom. Your ship, the Terran vessel Defiant, was the only craft in the Talos sector at the time of the attack. Weapon signature analysis confirms your plasma cannons were used. Debris recovered from Prosperity's Dawn contains fragments of your ship's ordnance. The displays shifted. Sarah watched herself on screen, though she had no memory of these moments. Her ship fired. The colony vessel exploded. 12,000 lives snuffed out in an instant. This is wrong, Sarah said, her voice rising despite herself. I responded to a distress call. When I arrived, the Prosperity's Dawn was already under attack. I engaged the hostile vessel. There was no other vessel, Velkith said smoothly. Our long-range sensors detected only your ship. Your story is a convenient fiction, Captain. A lie told by a species that has proven time and again it cannot be trusted with the responsibilities of spacefaring civilization. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gallery. Sarah saw it in their eyes and the way they looked at her. To them, she was guilty before the trial began. Humans were dangerous, impulsive, violent. This was simply proof of what they had always believed. Judge Morthak leaned forward. The Kryn was massive, his scales the color of old bronze. When he spoke, it sounded like rocks grinding together. Captain Chen, do you have any evidence to support your claim? Any sensor logs that show this phantom attacker? My ship's computer was damaged in the engagement, Sarah explained. The data is corrupted, but I know what I saw. There was another ship. It was using some kind of stealth technology. It mimicked my weapon signature. How convenient, Velkith said. Your evidence is destroyed. Your story cannot be verified. And yet you expect us to believe you over our own sensor networks? Over the physical evidence recovered from the debris field? Sarah's jaw tightened. I expect you to investigate properly, to look at all possibilities before condemning me. We have investigated, Judge Morthak said. For 3 weeks, this tribunal has examined every piece of evidence, every testimony. The conclusion is clear. Another judge spoke up. Whisper Song was a moth clan, delicate and ancient, her wings patterned with what looked like star maps. The human species has been volatile since joining the Concordat. 17 border incidents in 43 years, 6 diplomatic crises, 2 trade wars, and now this. Perhaps it is time to reconsider humanity's place in galactic society. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah understood what was happening. This trial was not about justice. It was about getting rid of a problem. Humanity had advanced too quickly, disrupted too many established power structures. The older races wanted them gone, and Sarah had given them the perfect excuse. The tribunal will now vote, Judge Morthak announced. All in favor of finding Captain Sarah Chen guilty of mass murder? One by one, the judges raised their appendages, tentacles, claws. 7 votes unanimous. Wait, Sarah said, her heart pounding. She had 1 card left to play. 1 desperate gambit she had been saving. I invoke the right of testimony by relic. The courtroom went silent. Judge Morthak's eyes narrowed. That law has not been used in over 4,000 years. But it still exists, Sarah said. I've read the Concordat Charter. Any accused has the right to present their case before the Vault of Echoes, to let the ancient artifacts bear witness to the truth. Velkith's crystalline body flashed with anger. This is a waste of time. The relics are dormant. They have been silent for millennia. Then what harm is there in letting me try? Sarah met his gaze. Unless you're afraid of what they might reveal. The judges conferred in hushed tones. Sarah could see the calculation in their expressions. If they denied her this right, it would look like they were hiding something. If they granted it, they were confident nothing would happen. The artifacts never responded. Everyone knew that. Finally, Judge Morthak spoke. Very well. The accused will be granted the right of testimony by relic. She will be transported to the Vault of Echoes on Tethvar. There she will have 1 hour to present her case to the ancient technology of the precursors. He paused. When the artifacts remain silent as they have for 4,000 years, this tribunal will reconvene and carry out the sentence. Death by molecular disintegration. Sarah nodded slowly. It was a small victory, but it was all she had. Thank you. As the guards moved to escort her out, Velkith stepped close. His voice was low, meant only for her. You cannot win, human. The artifacts are dead. Your species is not special. You are simply the latest in a long line of aggressive primitives who thought they could compete with their betters. Soon, you will be an example. A warning to your people about what happens when you reach too far. Sarah looked at him steadily. We'll see. They took her back to her cell, a small cube of transparent material that let everyone see her at all times. No privacy, no dignity. Just another way to break her down. But Sarah did not break. She sat on the hard bench and thought about Earth, about her family, about the millions of humans living throughout the galaxy who would be judged by what happened to her. She thought about the distress call she had answered, the desperation in the Valerian captain's voice, the way the cloaked ship had appeared out of nowhere, its weapons already firing. She had done everything right, followed every protocol, and still she had been too late. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were steady. She was not afraid of death. She was afraid of dying with the truth buried, of being remembered as a monster instead of what she really was, a soldier who had tried to save lives. Tomorrow they would take her to the Vault of Echoes. Tomorrow she would stand before the relics of a civilization that had vanished before any current species had learned to use fire. Tomorrow she would speak her truth to ancient technology that had not responded in recorded history. And somehow she had to hope that would be enough. The transport ship landed on Tethvar 3 days later. Sarah had spent the journey in isolation, surrounded by guards who would not speak to her. She was not a person anymore. She was a criminal, a killer. They treated her like something dangerous that might explode at any moment. Tethvar was a barren moon, its surface scarred by ancient impacts. But beneath the gray dust lay something extraordinary. The Vault of Echoes, the largest collection of precursor artifacts in known space. The precursors were a mystery that haunted every species in the galaxy. Millions of years ago they had existed. They had built incredible technology. They had left behind structures and devices on hundreds of worlds. And then they had vanished completely. No bodies, no records. Just empty buildings and silent machines. Every species had theories. The precursors had ascended to a higher plane of existence. They had destroyed themselves in war. They had left the galaxy to explore beyond. But no one knew for certain. The only evidence was the artifacts they left behind, and those artifacts had been silent for as long as anyone could remember. Sarah was led through massive blast doors and down into the heart of the moon. The corridors were wide enough to accommodate the largest species in the Concordat. The walls were smooth metal that seemed to absorb light. Everything here was old, ancient. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her. They reached a final set of doors, these ones covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The guard stopped. A figure emerged from the shadows beyond. Whisper of Ages was impossibly old. The Moth Clan archivist moved slowly, her wings tattered and faded. She had been the vault's curator for over 300 years. Her voice was soft, like dried leaves rustling. Captain Chen, I have maintained this place for longer than your species has known how to write. In all that time, I have seen thousands come here seeking answers from the precursors. The artifacts have never responded. Maybe they were waiting for the right question, Sarah said. The old Moth Clan made a sound that might have been a sigh. Hope is a cruel thing, young human, but you have the right to try. Come. They entered the vault proper and Sarah's breath caught. The chamber was massive, easily a kilometer across. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above. And everywhere she looked, there were artifacts, crystalline spheres floating in suspension fields, metallic obelisks covered in moving script, organic structures that pulsed with faint internal light, devices whose function no one could even guess at, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, the accumulated treasures of a dead civilization. "You have 1 hour," Harmonizer Velkith said from behind her. He had insisted on witnessing this himself. "Speak your truth to these dead things. When they do not answer, we will return to the court and finish what we started." Sarah ignored him. She walked forward into the forest of ancient technology. The guards stayed at the entrance, weapons ready, as if she could somehow escape from a moon in the middle of nowhere. She stood in the center of the chamber and began to speak. "My name is Sarah Chen. I am human. I am accused of murder, but I am innocent." Her voice echoed in the vast space. 3 weeks ago, I received a distress call in the Talos sector. A colony ship carrying Valerian refugees was under attack. I responded because that's what we do. That's what any decent being does when someone calls for help. The artifacts remained silent. Velkith made a satisfied sound. Sarah continued. "When I arrived, I found the Prosperity's Dawn being fired upon by an unknown vessel. It was using stealth technology I had never seen before. It was also somehow masking its weapons signature to look like mine. I engaged the hostile ship to protect the refugees." She walked among the artifacts as she spoke, drawn by something she could not name. "The hostile vessel was more advanced than my ship. It damaged my computer core, corrupting my sensor logs. Then it fired a final salvo at the colony ship and fled. I tried to help. I beamed over medical supplies and repair drones. But the Prosperity's Dawn's reactor had been too badly damaged. It went critical before we could evacuate everyone." Tears ran down Sarah's face now. She had not cried during the trial, had not let them see her break. But here, speaking to these ancient silent witnesses, the emotion poured out. "I pulled 300 people off that ship before it exploded. 300 out of 12,000. I can still hear their screams. The ones I couldn't reach, the ones who died while I was trying to save them. Still nothing. The artifacts stood dormant as they had for millennia. I don't know why the Concordat is framing me," Sarah said. "I don't know what they gain from making humanity look like monsters. But I know the truth, and I need you to know it too." She looked around at the alien technology. "You built all of this. You were advanced enough to seed technology across the entire galaxy. You must have valued something. Truth, maybe. Justice, the protection of innocent life." 30 minutes had passed. Then 40. Sarah's voice grew hoarse from speaking. She told them everything. Every detail of that day. Every decision she made and why. She held nothing back. The guards were getting restless. Velkith checked the time repeatedly, his crystalline body humming with anticipation. Whisper of Ages simply watched with sad ancient eyes. With 5 minutes remaining, Sarah found herself standing before a black monolith. It was different from the other artifacts, darker, more solid. It was covered in script that seemed to move when she looked at it directly. Symbols that almost made sense before slipping away from understanding. She placed her hand on its surface. It was warm. That surprised her. "Everything else in the vault was cold, please," she whispered. "I'm going to die. That's fine. I've made peace with it. But my people will be judged for something I didn't do. Billions of humans will pay the price for a crime that never happened. If you ever cared about justice, if that meant anything to your species, please, help me prove the truth." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the monolith began to glow. It started as a faint pulse beneath Sarah's palm. Then it spread, racing across the surface in waves of golden light. The symbols blazed with sudden clarity, and the monolith began to hum, a deep note that resonated in Sarah's bones. "What?" Velkith started to say. The entire vault exploded with light. Every artifact activated simultaneously. The crystalline spheres spun in their suspension fields. The obelisks projected beams of pure information into the air. The organic structures bloomed like flowers, and the noise was incredible, a symphony of sounds that had not been heard in recorded history. The guards raised their weapons, but they were frozen in place, held by some invisible force. The monolith spoke. Its voice was layered, as if 1,000 beings were speaking in perfect unison. It spoke in a language Sarah had never heard, but somehow she understood every word. Everyone did. Bearer of righteousness recognized. Sarah staggered back, but the light followed her. It wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Testimony validated, truth illuminated. The monolith began to project images into the air, not just images, reconstructions, perfect holographic recreations of events pulled from some source Sarah could not imagine. She saw the Talos sector. She saw her ship, the Defiant. And she saw what really happened that day, the truth displayed for all to witness, and it was about to change everything. The holographic display filled the entire vault. Sarah watched herself live through the worst day of her life again, but this time everyone could see what really happened. The reconstruction was perfect. Every detail captured with impossible accuracy. The Defiant received the distress call and jumped to the Talos sector. The Prosperity's dawn appeared on sensors, life signs showing 12,000 Valerian refugees aboard. And then the attack began. But it was not Sarah who fired first. A ship decloaked behind the colony vessel. It was sleek and dark, using technology that bent light around it. Even in the reconstruction, it was hard to look at directly. Its weapons charged and fired, striking the Prosperity's dawn's engines. The colony ship's distress calls became screams. Sarah's voice came through clearly. "This is Captain Chen of the Terran vessel Defiant. Unknown hostile. Cease fire immediately or I will engage." The hostile ship's response was to fire on the Defiant. Sarah's ship rocked under the impact, shields flaring. She had no choice. She returned fire, trying to disable the attacker without destroying it. The battle played out above them. The hostile ship was faster, better armed. It danced around Sarah's attacks while continuing to pound the Prosperity's dawn. Sarah made the hard call to focus on the hostile vessel, trying to draw it away from the refugees. It worked. The attacker turned its full attention to the Defiant. Sarah's ship took heavy damage. Warning lights flashed across her bridge. Her tactical officer reported that their computer core had been hit, sensor logs corrupting in real time. But Sarah kept fighting. She landed a solid hit on the hostile vessel, damaging its cloaking system. For just a moment, its hull markings became visible. Velkith made a strangled sound. The markings were Concordat Military, Black Operations Division, the same division that Velkith had served in before becoming a prosecutor. The hostile ship fired one last devastating salvo at the Prosperity's dawn, targeting its reactor directly. Then it cloaked and fled, jumping to hyperspace before Sarah could pursue. She immediately turned to the colony ship, launching rescue drones, beaming over supplies, coordinating with the Valerian captain to evacuate as many as possible. The hologram showed Sarah's face as she worked. The desperate focus, the tears streaming down her cheeks as the numbers kept climbing. 300 saved. 300 out of 12,000. The reactor went critical. The Prosperity's dawn exploded in a ball of plasma fire. Sarah had collapsed in her command chair, surrounded by survivors she had managed to pull from the doomed ship. Her crew worked frantically to provide medical care, to comfort the traumatized refugees, to do anything they could. The reconstruction faded. The vault fell silent except for the continued humming of the artifacts. "No," Velkith said. His voice was small, shocked. "This is impossible. The precursors could not have known. They have been gone for millions of years." The monolith pulsed with light. Testimony validated. Perpetrator identified. Evidence broadcast. Broadcast? Whisper of Ages whispered. "What do you mean broadcast?" The answer came immediately. Screens activated around the vault, showing news feeds from across the Concordat. The reconstruction was playing everywhere. On every communication channel. Every government frequency. The truth was spreading faster than light through quantum relays. Billions of beings were watching Sarah's innocence proven. And they were seeing the conspiracy that had tried to condemn her. Velkith lunged forward, trying to reach Sarah. "You should have died quietly, human. Your species is a threat to the established order. You advance too quickly. You disrupt everything." The guards tried to stop him, but they were still frozen by whatever force the artifacts had generated. Velkith's crystalline hands reached for Sarah's throat. The monolith's light intensified. A wave of energy burst outward, knocking Velkith back. He crashed into a floating sphere which chimed angrily. "Bearer of righteousness must not be harmed." Sarah looked down at her right hand. There was something on her palm now, a mark that had not been there before. It looked like a symbol burned into her skin, glowing with soft golden light. It did not hurt. It felt warm. "Right. What is this?" she asked. Whisper of Ages gasped. The old moth clan moved closer, her ancient eyes wide. The mark of the bearer. I have seen this only in the oldest texts. In legends so old I thought they were myths. She looked at Sarah with something like awe. The precursors chose certain individuals throughout history, beings who embodied their highest values: justice, compassion, the courage to do what is right even when it costs everything. They marked these individuals as bearers of righteousness. How many? Sarah asked. According to the records, only 17 in all of recorded history. Beings who changed the course of civilizations. Who stood against darkness when no one else would. Whisper of Age's wings trembled. The last bearer died 4,000 years ago. We thought the precursors were gone, that they would never choose again. Sarah stared at the mark on her hand. I'm not special. I just did my job. That is precisely why you were chosen, Whisper of Ages said softly. You risked everything to save people who were not your own species. You faced death with honor. You demanded truth over convenient lies. This is what the precursors valued. This is what they wanted to preserve. Velkith laughed bitterly from where he had fallen. This changes nothing. So the human was innocent, so what? The conspiracy will be buried. My allies are too powerful. We control the military, the courts, the trade guilds. We will, the monolith flared. Perpetrators identified, network exposed. Justice must be served. New images flooded the displays around the vault. Financial records. Communication logs. Video evidence. The conspiracy was vast, reaching into every level of concordant government. Dozens of officials, all working to discredit and remove humanity from galactic society. The evidence was damning and complete, and it was all being broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. No, Velkith whispered. No, no, no. You wanted to make me an example, Sarah said quietly. Congratulations. You succeeded, just not the way you planned. The guards were finally released from their paralysis. They immediately moved to secure Velkith, who did not resist. He seemed to collapse inward, his crystalline body dimming. He knew his life was over. More officials were flooding into the vault, judges from the tribunal, military commanders, ambassadors from every member species of the Concordat. They had seen the broadcast. They knew the truth. Judge Morthak approached Sarah slowly. The massive Kryn looked shaken. Captain Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Concordat, I offer our deepest apologies. A terrible wrong has been done to you and to your species. Sarah met his gaze. My people need more than apologies. We need to be treated as equals, not as primitives to be tolerated or threats to be eliminated. You have been marked by the precursors themselves, Morthak said. That changes everything. The bearer of righteousness is sacred to all species. You cannot be dismissed or marginalized. The law is clear. I don't want to be sacred, Sarah said. I want to be heard. I want humanity to have a fair chance, Whisper of Ages spoke up. The mark will not fade, Captain Chen. It is permanent. You are the bearer now, whether you wish it or not, and with that title comes both privilege and burden. Sarah looked at the mark on her hand again. It pulsed gently in time with her heartbeat. She thought about what Velkith had said, about humanity advancing too quickly, disrupting the established order. Maybe that was not a bad thing. Maybe the galaxy needed disruption, needed someone to question the old ways and push for something better. What happened to the other bearers? Sarah asked. The 17 before me? They became legends, Whisper of Ages said. Leaders who united species, warriors who defended the innocent, teachers who spread wisdom. Each left their mark on history. Sarah nodded slowly. Then I suppose I have work to do. The monolith pulsed one last time. Bearer acknowledged, truth preserved, purpose renewed. And then, just like that, it went silent. The golden light faded. The other artifacts in the vault powered down, returning to their millennia-long sleep. But the mark on Sarah's hand remained, glowing softly in the darkness. She was free, vindicated, and marked by ancient powers for a purpose she did not yet understand. Her life would never be the same. The Concordat exploded into chaos within hours of the broadcast. Sarah was moved from her cell to secure quarters that were actually comfortable. No more transparent walls, no more guards watching her every moment. But she was not free to leave either. Too many people wanted to talk to her. Too many factions were trying to figure out what her new status meant for the balance of power. The news feeds were overwhelming. Every channel showed the reconstruction from the vault. Analysts debated what it meant that the precursors had chosen a human. Religious leaders from dozens of species declared it a miracle. Political commentators predicted that humanity's status in the galaxy would skyrocket, but not everyone was happy. On the third day, an attempt was made on Sarah's life. She was meeting with human ambassadors, discussing what demands Earth should make in light of her vindication, when her door exploded inward. 3 armored figures rushed in, weapons raised. They moved with military precision, clearly professionals. Sarah's security team reacted instantly, but they were outnumbered. The assassins' weapons hummed with energy as they charged, ready to fire. Sarah raised her marked hand instinctively, trying to shield herself. The mark blazed with golden light. A barrier appeared around her, shimmering like heat waves. The assassins' weapons discharged, but the energy bolts simply dissolved against the barrier. The attackers hesitated, confused. Then the barrier expanded outward in a pulse. The assassins screamed. The light touched them and they simply burned away, reduced to ash in seconds. Their armor clattered to the floor, empty. The barrier faded as quickly as it had appeared. Sarah stared at her hand in shock. What just happened? Her security chief, a grizzled human named Martinez, checked the remains. Concordat military gear, Black Ops Division, same group that ran Velkith's conspiracy. He looked at Sarah with new respect. Ma'am, that mark just saved your life. The assassination attempt made everything worse. It proved the conspiracy ran deeper than anyone suspected. The broadcast had exposed dozens of officials, but clearly more remained hidden, and they were desperate enough to try killing a bearer of righteousness, which was considered one of the worst crimes in galactic law. Scholars descended on Tethavar from across the Concordat. They pored through ancient texts, trying to understand what had happened, what it meant. Why now, after millions of years of silence, had the precursors acted? Professor Thane was a Kesh academic, his crystalline body aged and clouded from centuries of study. He brought Sarah to his temporary research station near the vault and showed her what he had found. The texts are clear, Captain Chen. The bearers of righteousness were not random. They were chosen during times of crisis, when civilizations faced choices that would define their future. What kind of choices? Sarah asked. Whether to embrace justice or convenience, truth or comfortable lies, unity or division. Thane projected images of the previous bearers. The first bearer united 3 warring species and created the foundation for what would become the Concordat. The 7th bearer discovered a plague threatening billions and sacrificed everything to find a cure. The 14th bearer prevented a genocide by standing between 2 armies alone and refusing to move. Sarah looked at the faces of legends long dead. I'm not like them. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just answered a distress call. You answered it knowing you might die. You fought to protect people who were not your own. And when you were condemned for it, you demanded truth even though staying silent might have been easier. Thane's body chimed softly. Captain, the precursors valued moral courage above all else. They built technology that could reshape reality, but they understood that tools are worthless without character. Why humans? Sarah asked. We're the newest species in the Concordat. We barely understand precursor technology. Most races think we're primitive warmongers. Thane was quiet for a long moment. I have a theory. It is controversial, but the evidence supports it. I believe the precursors have been waiting for humanity specifically. That's impossible. We only developed faster than light travel 50 years ago. But your species' values, your history, your fundamental nature may align with what the precursors treasured. Thane pulled up more data. Humans are the only species that routinely risks themselves for strangers. Your literature is full of stories about protecting the weak, fighting injustice, sacrificing for the greater good. Other species have these values too, but for humans they seem to be central to your identity. We also have a history of wars and violence, Sarah pointed out. Yes, because you are willing to fight for what you believe is right. The precursors were not pacifists, Captain. They were warriors when they needed to be. But they fought for justice, not conquest. For protection, not domination. That distinction matters. Sarah thought about Earth, about human history. All the mistakes and triumphs. The slow, painful progress toward something better. So you're saying humanity is their intended heir? I am saying you may carry something they valued. Something the older races have lost or forgotten. Thane gestured to the vault below. For 4,000 years, those artifacts have been silent. No one could activate them. And then you arrive, speak your truth, and they respond immediately. That is not coincidence, the implications were staggering. If Thane was right, humanity's role in the galaxy was about to change dramatically, and not everyone would be happy about it. That night, Sarah sat in her quarters and examined the mark on her hand. It had become part of her now, as natural as a scar. When she concentrated, she could feel something through it. A connection to something vast and ancient, like standing at the edge of an ocean and sensing the depths below. There was a knock at her door. Whisper of Ages entered, moving slowly on her aged wings. The old Moth Clan curator carried a data tablet. Captain Chen, I have discovered something. Something the other scholars have not yet seen. What is it? Records from the time of the last bearer. 4,000 years ago. Whisper of Ages sat down carefully. The bearer was a Kryn named Stone That Endures. He was chosen during a time of great corruption, when the Concordat was nearly destroyed by internal conflict. He rooted out the conspirators and restored justice. But the records say something strange happened after he died. What? The precursor facilities began to shut down. Not all at once, but gradually over centuries, as if they were waiting for something. Waiting for the right moment to act again. Whisper of Ages looked at Sarah intently. I believe they were waiting for humanity to be ready. Ready for what? To inherit their purpose. To carry forward what they began. The old curator's wings rustled. The precursors did not vanish, Captain Chen. I think they transcended. Moved beyond physical form. But before they did, they seeded the galaxy with technology and chose specific beings to guide younger races toward their values. You are the latest in that line. Sarah felt the weight of it pressing down on her. I didn't ask for this. None of the bearers did. That is why they were worthy. Whisper of Ages stood to leave. You have been given a gift, Captain. And a burden. What you do with it will shape the future. For humanity and for all of us. After she left, Sarah looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the conspirators who had tried to kill her were regrouping. Plotting. Fearing what she represented. Change. Disruption. A challenge to the established order. They should be afraid. Because Sarah, Chen had been tested in fire and found worthy. She had been marked by ancient powers as a champion of justice, and she had no intention of letting that honor go to waste. The Concordat had tried to make her an example, a warning to humanity about reaching too high. Instead, they had created something else entirely. A symbol, a rallying point, proof that humans could stand among the greatest beings in galactic history. The mark on her hand pulsed softly, responding to her determination. She was the bearer of righteousness now, and there was work to be done. The trials began 2 months after Sarah's vindication. The Concordat's grand courthouse, the same place where she had been condemned, now hosted a very different kind of proceeding. Harmonizer Velkith was already dead. He had taken his own life in his cell rather than face judgment, but 53 others stood accused of conspiracy, attempted genocide through legal manipulation, and violation of the Concordat Charter. The evidence from the precursor broadcast was ironclad. There could be no doubt, no legal maneuvering, no escape. Sarah attended every day of the trials, not out of revenge, but because she felt the victims of the Prosperity's dawn deserved a witness, someone who had tried to save them, someone who would not let their deaths be forgotten. The Valerian community asked to meet with her during the 3rd week. They filled a conference room. 300 survivors from the colony ship and families of those who had died. Sarah had dreaded this moment. What could she say to them? How could she explain that she had only saved a fraction? But when their leader, an elderly Valerian named Seeker of Dawn, approached her, there were tears in his large eyes. Captain Chen, we have watched the trials. We have seen the reconstruction. We know now what you did for us, what you risked, how hard you fought. He bowed deeply. We can never repay the debt we owe you. I wish I could have saved more, Sarah said quietly. You saved who you could. That is all anyone can do. Seeker of Dawn placed his hand over his heart. You are family to the Valerian people now, forever. It was the moment Sarah finally let herself cry. Not tears of grief this time, but of release. The weight she had been carrying since that terrible day eased just a little. But the galaxy's attention was not on the trials. It was on the larger question that Sarah represented. The human question emergency sessions of the Concordat Council debated for weeks. What did it mean that a human had been chosen as bearer? Should humanity's status be elevated? Were they entitled to special privileges? Should they be feared? Ambassador Williams, Earth's senior representative, met with Sarah regularly to discuss strategy. He was an older man, silver-haired and diplomatic. The council is split, he explained. Half want to embrace this as proof of humanity's potential. They see political advantage in aligning with us now. The other half fear what it means if we become too influential too quickly. What do you think? Sarah asked. I think we have an opportunity, but we need to be smart about it. Williams pulled up reports. 17 human colonies have applied for full member status since your vindication. Trade requests have tripled. 3 species have approached us about military alliances. We're no longer the questionable newcomers. We're players now. Is that what we want? To be players in galactic politics? Williams smiled. What we want is to be treated fairly, to have a voice in decisions that affect us, to not be judged by our worst members while other species get judged by their best. Your mark gives us leverage to demand that. Sarah understood what he was not saying. The mark had made her a political tool, a symbol that could be used to advance Earth's interests. Part of her hated that, but another part recognized the reality. Power was the only language the galaxy truly understood. She made a decision. I want to lead an expedition. What kind of expedition? To find more precursor sites, especially ones that might explain why they chose humanity. Sarah looked at the mark on her hand. The monolith responded to me. It activated after millions of years of silence. There has to be a reason, something we're missing, and I think the answer is out there in the ruins they left behind. Williams considered this. That could work. Position you as seeking knowledge rather than power. Makes humanity look curious and humble instead of ambitious. He nodded slowly. I'll propose it to the council. Frame it as a scientific mission with diplomatic components. You'll need a mixed crew, representatives from multiple species. I want the best people, not political appointees. You'll get both, Williams said bluntly. That's the price of playing this game. But I'll make sure you have real scientists and explorers too. People who care about discovery. The council approved the mission after 3 weeks of debate. Sarah would command a new ship, the Vindication, with a mandate to explore precursor sites and report her findings to the Concordat. It was a compromise that satisfied multiple factions. The humans got their bearer in a position of prominence. The other species got oversight of what she discovered. Everyone got to claim they supported knowledge and cooperation. The Vindication was beautiful. A sleek vessel incorporating technology from a dozen species, designed for long-range exploration. Her crew of 200 represented every major Concordat race. Some were genuine volunteers excited about the mission. Others were clearly spies for their governments. Sarah would have to navigate both. Her first officer was Commander T-Vex, a Kryn warrior with decades of experience. He had served under Stone That Endures, the last bearer, 4,000 years ago. The fact that he was still alive shocked Sarah until she learned that Kryn could live for millennia if they chose to. I requested this assignment, T-Vex told her during their first meeting. I served one bearer. I will serve another. It is my honor and purpose. Did Stone That Endures teach you anything I should know? Sarah asked. Yes. Being bearer is not about being special. It is about being willing to do what others will not. To stand in the fire when everyone else runs. To speak truth when lies are easier. T-Vex's ancient eyes studied her. You have already proven you understand this. Now you must live it every day for the rest of your life. The science team was led by Professor Thane, the Kesh scholar who had researched the bearers. He had jumped at the chance to join the expedition. We have studied the precursors for thousands of years, he said. But we have always been looking at them through the lens of our own species. You offer something different. A fresh perspective. Perhaps you will see what we have missed. Launch day came 3 months after Sarah's vindication. The Vindication departed from Concordat Central Station to cheers and protests in equal measure. Half the galaxy celebrated. The other half watched with suspicion and fear. Sarah stood on the bridge as they jumped to hyperspace, heading for the first precursor site on their list. The mark on her hand tingled, responding to something she could not name, like it was pulling her toward something important. Captain, the sensor officer called out. She was a young moth clan named Flutter of Wings. I'm picking up strange readings from the precursor site. Energy signatures activating. Multiple sources. That's impossible, Thane said from his station. Those facilities have been dead for millennia. Sarah looked at her hand. The mark was glowing brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Maybe they were just sleeping, waiting for the right signal. What signal? Tvex asked. Me. The Vindication dropped out of hyperspace near the precursor site. It was a massive structure built into an asteroid, all sweeping curves and impossible angles, and it was lit up like a star, energy cascading across its surface. Captain, Flutter of Wings said, her voice shaking, I'm detecting the same energy signature from 37 other precursor facilities across the galaxy. They're all activating simultaneously. The crew stared at the screens in shock. Dozens of ancient sites, spread across thousands of light years, all waking up at the same moment. Because of her. Because the bearer had returned. Sarah felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. This was bigger than her trial. Bigger than humanity's place in the galaxy. The precursors had left something behind. A legacy, a purpose, and they had been waiting millions of years for someone worthy to inherit it. Take us in, Sarah ordered. Let's find out what they left for us. The Vindication moved toward the awakening structure. Sarah's mark blazed with golden light, responding to the ancient technology. She did not know what they would find, what challenges lay ahead, what enemies would rise to stop them. But she knew this was just the beginning. She was Sarah Chen, human, captain, bearer of righteousness. And she would not fail the trust that had been placed in her. Behind the Vindication, stars wheeled in the endless dark. Ahead, ancient mysteries waited to be revealed. The precursors had made their choice. They had bet on humanity, on the idea that these young, impulsive, passionate beings might carry forward what they had begun. Now it was time to prove them right. Sarah touched the mark on her hand one more time, feeling its warmth, its promise, its burden. Then she turned to her crew. Let's get to work. We have a galaxy to explore and a legacy to understand, and something tells me the precursors left us more than just ruins. They left us a mission. What mission? Tvex asked. Sarah smiled. I guess we're about to find out. The Vindication accelerated toward the awakening structure, carrying the bearer of righteousness and her crew toward a destiny that had been waiting for millions of years. Humanity had reached for the stars and been tested. They had been judged worthy. Now they would discover what that truly meant. For themselves and for the entire galaxy,